Support for this program is provided by
The Women's Hospital delivers comprehensive health care to women and infants through inpatient and outpatient obstetrical, gynecologic, and education programs. The Women's Hospital, only at Deaconess.
additional support provided by Girling Law and Toyota Indiana.
I worked for the Department of Child Services for 4 years, and in that time, I witnessed or was a part of domestic violence, sexual abuse, trauma, and attacks from parents and children physically coming after me, and so it was 4 years of that. I've had a 18-year-old young man that attacked me in a mental institution, and I was thoroughly convinced that I was going to die at that moment.
I was in Iraq, was getting mortared and all kinds of attacks. You know, I seen a guy being burnt on fire, smelling dead flesh. In my nightmares, I can smell it. So when I wake up, it's the smell still in the air. I seen a whole convoy civilian get destroyed, you know, and then we had to drag the vehicles back in with their bodies in it. Seeing kids get hung from, you know, messing with the base. I almost shot 2 kids while I was there. I almost shot a lot of adults while I was there. When you think about it, there is second nature, you know, survival. And then you think about here, you're like, how could I even done some of that stuff? Or, you know, how do you recover from this stuff?
I was in an emotionally and physically abusive relationship for several years. He would make me hold razor blades in my mouth for, you know, up to an hour to teach me to be quiet. He threatened to kill me or my family. He cut all my hair down to my scalp one time. My biggest symptom of PTSD is nightmares, and they are the most vivid, terrifying nightmares. And for years, nearly every night I would wake up drenched in sweat and terrified. I would avoid any place reminding me of him and what happened for several years after I left him. I'd check at night to see if the door was locked, 5 times before I went to bed. And it completely interrupted my life.
I experienced PTSD from the birth and the pregnancy of my triplets in 2015. So this episode is very near to my heart. When I shared my story of PTSD with other women, they reached out to me and said, "Oh my God, that's how I felt too. That's what I'm feeling now." And they couldn't believe that they could have PTSD from a pregnancy or a birth. And you'll see that it can come from a variety of events, and it can happen to anyone.
When Jude was like a year old, our first son, we decided decided that we were going to have another kid. And my husband was like, okay. And so we started trying. And after about 9 or 10 months of trying on our own, at that point, I was like, calculating and counting the days and when I ovulated and taking the tests and that started happening kind of towards the end, like months 6 and 7, 8 and 9 and 10. And then I went to see my doctor, and usually like around the year, they'll start doing some minor fertility drugs. So we did Clomid for a couple of months. That didn't work. So we were referred to a fertility specialist. We did a couple of rounds of infertility treatments, and then I think around our 4th month there, our 4th treatment, we decided to do IUI, which is like insemination. We used James's sperm, and it's like a big turkey baster, it's like, insemination, and found out quickly after that we were having triplets.
Became a EMT in 2009. Got my national registry, and then I just progressed into fire service. I was working for a company, and they wanted me to take fire training to help, and so I did, and I loved it. And I actually took my fire training here at McCutcheonville prior to joining the department. And
so you were an EMT and a fireman?
And a fireman, yes.
Okay. And now a nurse?
And now a nurse, yes.
So PTSD is a diagnosis that we use, but it's a way to kind of discuss experiences and then symptoms that we see after. So one of the main criteria is that someone experiences an event that is either life-threatening or feels, I'm in danger, right? Something threatening happened to me. So that's definitely criteria number one. And then what we'll see is kind of some shifts in behavior a little bit. So we can see some avoidance strategies, being wanting to be away from, avoiding situations, people, places, anything that can trigger reminders of what this thing that happened or things that have happened. We also see with PTSD some distressing, imposing, sometimes dreams, thoughts, memories, re-experiencing. You can see shifts in emotional state, anxiety, fear. Those kinds of things are more of like the technical definition, I guess, if we're talking about that. If we can say cool or interesting thing for people to connect to is nobody's PTSD or response to trauma has to look the same.
Around 12 weeks pregnant, I woke up and I was like laying in a pool of blood. I immediately thought I lost the babies. And we went to my doctor's office. There were 3 babies with 3 heartbeats there, and I was hemorrhaging. So they put me on bed rest, and I was at home laying on the couch for 2 months. Every time I got up or went to the bathroom, it was just like pools of blood, and that was really hard because every time I went to the bathroom, I just thought I was losing the babies. And so it became a really emotional experience kind of from the get-go. My mom was going to come over after work. And I was laying in my bed. I was 20 weeks pregnant. The babies were just little tiny things, And I woke up and I was wet. Like I panicked, but like I knew that my water had broken. And I knew that this was really bad. So my mom was actually on her way already. So I call her and I was like, Mom, my water broke. You've got to get here really quickly. And she comes in the door like guns blazing, and she grabs me a towel and I like put it between my legs and we go get in the car. They were ready for us at the hospital. We called ahead of time and they had a wheelchair and they wheeled me up. We went upstairs. And they did some testing to see if my water had broken. And it had. And I just remember looking at the doctor. And he was like really calm. And he just like, it was just like there was nothing that was like he could do. They take me to a room. And this is kind of where the moment that I'm going to describe is like one of the moments that haunted me for a long time. I was laying in my hospital bed and James was sitting right here. And there was a doctor right here. And my doctor had come in and she was in like her, like a t-shirt and like workout shorts and tennis shoes. And James's parents were sitting over here to my left. They were all just kind of standing over the bed. And they told me that 75% of women, when their water breaks, they're going to deliver in 24 hours. And I remember like looking up at the ceiling and just crying, like quietly. Because like we had come so far, all the fertility and like laying in bed for 2 months. And like, I can just remember the way that the doctor, her pants were tied in her scrubs. And I remember she had white tennis shoes on. I remember my doctor had a white t-shirt on and black shorts and tennis shoes on. I remember like the smell of the room. And I remember that the doctor had her hair in a ponytail and it was curly. It was kind of hanging out like on the side. I remember how she was sitting in the chair. And I remember the look on her face. It was like sad, but professional and like to the point, but like really sad. I don't know how or whatever the universe wanted for me, but I held those babies for 8 more weeks in the hospital. So at like 27 weeks and 4 days or something, I started contracting, and they started getting closer together and closer together and closer together. So I was in like hardcore labor for like 3 days, like contracting every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, like straight up like contractions, not like Braxton Hicks or like contracting, like hold onto the bed for 3 days. And James had come in and I just wept and I was like, I am so tired. Like, I don't know how much more that I can do this, you know? My body was done. It was, I mean, my blood pressure was getting like scary high, and they ended up doing C-section on the babies. But
What day?
on 28.1.
So 28 weeks, 1 day.
Jillian was baby A, and she was at the bottom, and she was 2 pounds, 2 ounces. Reed was baby B, and he was 1 pound, 14 ounces. And Alex's baby C over here, and he was 2 pounds, 2 ounces.
So none of the other calls affected me as bad as this one did. Most of them, you know, a couple days, I'm good. But this particular one still affects me today. Myself and a recruit were staying on station, sleeping. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and we get toned out or called to a unresponsive infant that's not breathing. Through experience, you know, I've responded to a lot of pediatric calls. Parents are waiting for you. That was not the case. So we find this residence. I walk up the steps to the porch. Had a gate. The gate was locked. Had to navigate through a locked gate. And then I had to beat on the door to get them to answer. And the 911 recording, you can hear me trying to get through the door, beating on the door to get them to answer it. What I was not expecting was just how horrific the scene was when the door was open. Basically a 1-month-old lying in the middle of the floor, the father of the child attempting to do what appeared to be CPR, and just a horrendous mess everywhere. Broken glasses, trash, horrific living conditions for anyone, let alone a newborn. So I go and I check the patient's pulse, their breathing. They're not there. You know, there's no pulse, not breathing. I vividly remember how white the child was. So white that it was a male infant, and I thought it was a female because of the diaper. It was the same color as the diaper. So that's how pale this child was, stiff, cold. But we have a policy that once CPR started, we continue CPR, and that's what I did. I'm doing CPR, kneeling next to a broken glass, and in the background I hear a child laughing. The infant's older sister, who might have been 4, not sure, was laughing and giggling in the background, had no idea what was going on. I don't remember seeing her. I just remember that child's laughter in my head. But I knew something was wrong. Immediately knew something was wrong. So the next firefighter through the door, I had them leave and call Vanderbilt County Sheriff's Department. So an investigation could be started. Because newborns don't just die. They don't stop breathing on their own. Kids don't die. Just for random things.
Actually, so we see that trauma can change our brains, right? So there can actually be changes in our brain after trauma. We have an alarm center in our brain. It's a part of our brain that we all have. And if we have an experience in trauma, it's constantly scanning our environment, but very quickly able to say, oh, that dog is inside the fence, it's not coming at me, or those kinds of things. But when someone's experienced PTSD and we start to see the structural change, that alarm no longer says, oh, I've scanned it, I've assessed it, I'm safe. We can start to see people don't know when I'm safe.
Shortly after they got home, something happened. It was like I kept seeing those moments in my head like movies, like flashbacks. Like I kept like I was there, it's so hard to explain, but it was like a picture or like a movie, and it would just go into my head, and I was like back there again, and I would just cry, and I would like go and get under the covers, and I would just cry, and I felt like I couldn't do anything, and I couldn't like, and I wasn't like sad or depressed. It was just like vivid memories, but they wouldn't like stop rotating in my head. It was like, that's all I could see, and it would just go back and back and back. And I felt really stupid, and I felt so foolish because like my kids are okay. Like there's nothing wrong with them. They're healthy babies. But it was like, it didn't matter, but it still made me feel really foolish to like feel that way. And that was hard for James to understand, because he was like, but they're okay. And I'd be like, but that's not what I'm saying. I just cried all the time, all day. I just cried. I felt like I couldn't move. I felt like I couldn't like function. I felt like I couldn't take care of the triplets. But there's really no way to describe it unless you're like feeling those things. And I can so see how James would feel. He's like, everything's good and they're healthy and they're fine. And I just felt crazy.
And then it was suggested for me to take some time off, which I did. I took 72 hours where I turned the pager off, turned the radio off, stayed with my now wife, girlfriend at the time, and just decompressed. But I couldn't sleep. I didn't have an appetite. Every time I closed my eyes, all I saw was this baby's face. I thought, I've had this before, it'll go away in a few days, I'll be fine. It didn't. Working at the hospital, I had a pediatric code come in, or pediatric cardiac arrest. Different situation, was not unexpected. This child had several diseases and disease processes, so it wasn't a surprise. But as I'm doing CPR on this 2 or 3 year old, significantly larger than a 1 month old, all I kept seeing and flashing to was this little baby. So I'm like, I need help. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I'm seeing dead babies everywhere. I need help. They contacted one of the counselors in the area, and I met with him and met with some other counselors, and it was determined that I needed more than just counseling. So we put me on some anti-depression medicine for a short time to kind of get me through it, and I did great. I got to come off the medicine. Everything was fine. It was determined that the cause of death on this child was due to negligence, so there was going to be a court hearing. The mother was arrested, I believe, so this is 2 a.m. I think she was arrested that afternoon, never really left police custody. So as the trial was coming up and I was getting subpoenaed and had to meet with the prosecutor's office, all this stuff started coming back. Because I thought I had dealt with it, but I just pushed it back. And pretty well. I started having to see a counselor again, back on the medicine to help stabilize my mood, because I was probably not the most pleasant person to be around. I was angry, at the smallest things. Not really a big public person. Couldn't go out in public. So everything's going well. I'm feeling better. They put foot in the trial. I go back into my stasis mode, and then the trial comes back up, and it's just a cycle every time. I got to testify on the stand, and the mother was found guilty, and that was the closure that I needed to be able to start moving on. I still struggle with it when I think about it. I struggle with it when I have to respond to calls, and I struggle with having to deal with kids, sick kids, which I never had a problem before. I actually prided myself in being able to handle that without breaking down like some other people. That's not the case anymore.
And most of the flashbacks and the memories, they were just like right there, and I couldn't get them to like exit my brain. The only way that I can describe it was like I just kept like reliving it, like staring at the ceiling and them telling me that in 24 hours that I was going to deliver these babies. And it makes me even vulnerable thinking about it now, like even talking about this, because it seems so trivial, but it's what happened to me, and thank God for our crisis child care center. I know the center and I know what they do. And I took the triplets over there and I went and got help. I mean, I started going to therapy, and I started seeing a counselor, and we did EMDR, and I went through many sessions, and they diagnosed me with PTSD, and did what I could, and went for a couple of months, and then felt good about it. Like I didn't need to go anymore. I just I don't know. I felt like there was just like this big rock kind of in front of me, and I needed to kind of navigate through this and get some tools to kind of move forward. Another thing, was going back to the hospital. Anytime like I had to go back there, I would like pull up. Like if a friend, like when my friend had a baby, I pulled up to the hospital. This was like 6 months or so after, maybe a year after, God, even almost a year. I just bawled my eyes out in the parking lot. Like, because like a flood of emotions came back, and like fear, and but I just walked through the door and I was fine. But that happened several times until I kind of got further and further away from it. And I couldn't look at newborn pictures of them for a while. A friend had come and taken newborn pictures of them and brought them over to me, and I just couldn't look at them. Like I tried, and I was like hurting myself. Like I looked at them and I just cried, and I was like, another time, and then it took me a while to look at them, almost probably 2 years to like look at those pictures. I'm not talking like newborn pictures. I'm talking like right, like as they were born. Like some of them are like in the OR.
Like birth photography.
Yeah, birth photography. Yeah, it was like the pictures I had taken like in the OR. They weren't like graphic, but I could not look at them. Just so much sadness, and I felt so bad for being sad, because like I would be sitting at the computer and I wanted to look at these pictures, and I would look down and my kids are playing and they're happy, and I just could not. It was like I couldn't be happier because it was just so much that I just relived it or remembered it. It just feels foolish, but I guess felt like I just did what I had to do.
I felt kind of alone in the sense that we had all these responders go to the scene, and I was affected the most. I felt like I was weak. Like I couldn't handle my own business, and looking back on it now, I had a lot of stress right from the minute the call came out, and that because I reacted different to this call doesn't make me any weaker, doesn't make me any less able to do my job. It just makes me human, and made me realize that not everyone is man of steel, that we have to have emotions, and that's what I try to stress to my guys, that get it out, because we've had several members over the years that have quit for one reason or another, and I would hate to think that someone left something that they felt so passionate about simply because we weren't there to support them and give them the care that they needed.
I didn't go to therapy very long, but I think just somebody validating it for me, that was what I needed. And for me to kind of put a label on it, and somebody to say, okay, those symptoms, yes, I get that. That's what that is. Then it kind of put me in a different place.
It's getting better. I mean, we have a daughter that we adopted, and in a lot of ways, she's pushing me to do things, and I have to do things with her. And I have to put on a brave face for her, because she has had a lot of trauma in her own life. So in a lot of ways, she is helping heal me. We went to a huge concert in October, which I would have never done, ever, in the past, and I got through it, and I was fine. And I think a lot of it has to do with my daughter.
So getting Bella, it was a journey. She helps a lot, here and there. If she knows that, my anxiety's kicking in, she'll nudge my knee, when we're walking and I'm freaking out, she'll just run into my knee and bounce off, and then if I don't pay attention to it, she'll do it again and keep doing it until, my mind is off of my surroundings and onto her. My nightmares, she wakes me up, she bites my arm to get me up. At first it was weird, and then I understood, talking to the trainer, he's like, yeah, that's her job, and she helps me get out more. So it's just well worth it.
I'm much better today. Much better through support from a lot of great women in my life. My current husband, who's very understanding and supportive. And in this past year, I'm finally starting to feel like I'm moving forward. Things still hurt sometimes, but the good outweighs the bad.
If you or someone you know may be suffering from PTSD, there is help available.
I teach every year on first responder resiliency and mental health awareness, and I tell my story and I cry. I let people know it's okay, and firefighters cry, men cry. It's fine, because I don't want people to think that it's wrong. It's not. Emotions are there for a reason. I'm a big use the jug analogy. You can only fit so much stuff in a jug before it starts overfilling, and so if we keep it all in, then eventually it's going to spill over. So it's better to get it out prior to that happening.
Support for this program is provided by
The Women's Hospital delivers comprehensive health care to women and infants through inpatient and outpatient obstetrical, gynecologic, and education programs. The Women's Hospital, only at Deaconess.